Hey guys, sorry you don't get to see my face. My eyes are too red and puffy, um, for me to show you my face right now. Um, just really quickly, we had my aunt passed away out of nowhere, on Thursday. So I'm trying to get this done before I get back over to Price, for the viewing and funeral today. Because if I don't get it done, then it will be late and you guys won't. Well, I'll be freaking out because you can't comment on it. So I'm sorry that it's taking me this long to do it and I'm doing it at the very end. But I'm just going to really quickly go over my unit with you guys. I'm doing a unit on argumentative essays, in the 7th grade classroom. So I have this PowerPoint, that's like 26 PowerPoints long that I'll use throughout the whole unit. So I'll do a couple PowerPoints a day throughout my lessons, for the students to see, and so I have some talking points for them so I don't forget what I'm trying to tell them. So really quickly, I'll just go over this PowerPoint with you, and then I'll go over to my teacher work sample unit, and I'll go through some of the lessons with you. So for the argumentative writing, we're going to talk about the points of argumentative essay, how it's different from persuasive essays. So I give them some examples of this argumentative essay, why you need a claim, why you need evidence, counterclaim, and rebuttal. Because when you're arguing with someone, if you have a point, you say that was a lame movie, and they say why, you can't just say, well, because. You can say, well, the special effects were bad, the monsters were obviously fake. Then they say, well, I thought it was good because the acting was believable. You can't just say, well, you're stupid and your point is wrong. You say, well, yeah, the acting was good, but the horrible special effects made it too distracting and caused even the actors to have some awkward moments. So then we'll go over some examples. I'll have them group up and they'll tell me what a bad response would be and what a good response would be. We talk about the difference between persuasion versus argumentation. That was one thing that the 7th graders in the classroom that I worked with this year really seemed to struggle with. They could get the difference between informative writing and argumentative writing, but persuasion, they were like, well, that's the same thing. So I have a few slides that I go over how persuasion is different than argumentation, because argumentation brings forth logical reasoning, examples. They pull from text, so they do some research in argumentative writing. Difference between persuasion and argumentative. The elements that we go over counterclaim, rebuttal. We talk about why it's important to keep using the rhetorical triangle that they've used before, why organization is important, give them some examples of how to organize. We talk about the importance of a title, why you need one, create a title. Again, they'll do an activity with their partner. Well, they'll look at a model and they'll read the title of it. So they're not going to read the whole essay. They're just going to read the title, and then they'll talk with their partner what they think the essay is about, if they think the title was effective, and then we'll share as a class. So we'll do the same thing with an introduction. Why is an introduction important? What does it even do for the essay? Methods for constructing an introduction. We'll do some practice again where they'll read an introduction and decide whether they think that sets up the essay well or not. We'll talk about the importance of thesis statements, body paragraphs with their topic sentences, counter arguments, how they're effective, rebuttals, conclusions, and then we'll get to the fun part where we'll do project ideas. So that's kind of my whole PowerPoint that I've put together that goes through the whole unit. So now I'll flip back over to my lesson plans, where we start with the first lesson, where I get some background knowledge from them. So we talk about their informative writing that they did in 6th grade, and they tell me what they remember about it, what they remember about essay writing, and they'll start to fill out a KWL chart. So they'll tell me what they know about essay writing already, and they'll tell me what they want to know about argumentative writing, and then at the very end of the unit, they fill in that L portion where they tell me what they've learned about argumentative writing. And I'll use that as kind of like an informal assessment at the end of the unit. Each day, I will start my students with the STAR journal. This STAR journal is different than what I've seen before in other English classes, and what I'd kind of pictured myself doing was having a journal for my students where they'd have a writing prompt that they'd fill out, or just something about their day to kind of give them some bell work while I took attendance and things like that. But the teacher that I worked with this year, she had a STAR journal for the students. So not only did they have writing prompts in them, but during some of her handouts for the lesson, she has a table of contents, and so she says on page 33, we're going to start working on argumentative essays. So you're going to put what an argumentative essay is, and she has a handout for them, and they glue that into their STAR journal, and then they take notes on page 34 about the lesson that they've learned that day about it. So their whole journal was just full of handouts and glue-ins, which I thought was really helpful because they could take that into their 8th grade. I mean, maybe not take it into their classroom, but they could have it at home and say, oh, hey, I remember learning about conjunctions and why they're important, or why an introduction is important. Okay, yeah, so this is for an argumentative introduction, so I can adapt that into a narrative. And this is what my introduction should still have the hook and still go over what I'm going to talk about in my essay, but I just don't have to argue in this one. So they can see really the steps of writing an essay and just add in or take out the things that they need to. Each of the classrooms that I was in had a Chromebook. Each student had a Chromebook that they could use. So I used lots of Schmoot videos in my lesson plans. I think that's a fun way for the students to be able to listen to a voice rather than my own, and learn about the lessons that we're giving them. None of the videos are very long. That's one thing that I really liked about the Schmoot videos that we did, is I think the longest one that we used was 2.5 minutes. So the students had kind of 2.5 minutes to listen to something else, and then they could talk to their desk buddy about it. They could say, oh, this is what I learned about it. This was funny about it. Because lots of the Schmoot videos, if you guys have seen them, there's some funny things in there that they bring to the students, so that they're not just, oh, here's a lecture and let me tell you everything about it. They have some different things. And I just think it's a great thing to have students. You know, some students really learn better listening. Some students learn better hands-on. And so having these different projects where some of them they'll actually be writing, some of them they'll be listening. A lot of my lessons have peer work. So like you saw in my slideshow, they partner up during a title. They'll partner up during a counterclaim. I have a counterclaim activity where I have a couple slides put together on a different slideshow, and it says breakfast food is better than dinner food. Blue is better than green. Running is better than riding a bike. And just silly things like that hopefully won't, I mean, I'm not going to bring any like professional teams into it because I don't need fights breaking out in my classroom, but just funny things like that where they'll partner up with their desk buddy. And the classroom that I was in, there were just rows of 2, and so they had a desk buddy. That's what I'm talking about every time I say that, and that's what my teacher used to, and I've just got used to saying that. But we'll start it out, I'll say, okay, the person with shorter hair will be for this, and the person with longer hair will be against this. And then they'll say, okay, well, breakfast food. So the person for breakfast food being better than dinner food, they'll give an example of why. Then the other partner will have a counterclaim. So they're working on stating a claim, counterclaim, and that rebuttal in that whole activity. But it's a fun way to do it. So I'm not just saying, okay, here's a claim. Now I want you guys to write down all these different examples of a counterclaim. And then being able to talk to each other, I think is a way to accommodate for them so that they're getting some hands-on learning. They're getting some wiggle time. 7th graders need wiggle time, I've learned. It's almost like you need to get up and do head, shoulders, knees, and toes with them before you start any lesson because they are everywhere. In the program that we'll be doing, the district that I'm working in, they use Utah Compose all the time. They love it. They think it's wonderful. And so they require each teacher to do at least one writing thing in Utah Compose that they could submit to the district for some data on the students to see what you're teaching well. So multiple times throughout my unit, I have them submit what they've already have in Utah Compose. So one day we work on just an introduction, and I'll have them submit their essay. Even though it's not done, so it'll seem like they're getting a low score. But one thing with that I've seen is students who submit and they had a low score and then they added to it and it really jumped their score up. They got excited about writing and they're like, oh, I can do this. Look at how much better I've gotten just from Monday to Wednesday. And it wasn't necessarily that their writing was exceptionally better, but they added more to their essay, which gave them a better score. But it gave them that drive to continue writing instead of having, okay, hurry and write out a whole essay and submit it, and they get like a 20. And then, okay, now revise and submit it again, and they get a 22. And they're like, oh, wow, there was no point in revising. Why will I ever revise an essay? Because it barely brings anything up. So having them submit a couple times through the unit, I think was a good thing. I have a bunch of posters that I have, so show me the proof, talk about why it's important. This one I really liked was the evidence-based terms. So you talk about, the author stated, according to the text, from the reading, I know this, and talking about why it's important to pull that evidence from the text in their argumentative writing. So like I said before, I have lots of videos. The Scope magazine. Sorry, I saw that and I remembered that I forgot to tell you. So for the school that I was working in, they subscribe to the Scope magazine for the students. So I use that a lot in my lesson plans because I want them to use what the school has provided for them. And one fun thing that we did in the class that I was in, they had a Scope article that they read, and it was about emojis. So what we had is we had them read it, and then they gave us reasoning from the text. So they had to pull evidence out of the text to tell us how they knew what the most used emoji of 2018 was. So this whole article, it was probably like a page long. It wasn't really that long for the students. They read about how emojis kind of started. There's a conference every year where a bunch of these designers get together that make the emojis, and they decide which the most used emoji was, which emojis they get rid of, and then adding emojis to your phone. So emojis just like randomly appear on your phone because of this awesome group that gets together and says, hey, we need a cat with heart eyes now because people love cats and they're using them a lot. The most used emoji of 2018, in case you guys are wondering, was the laughing with the crying, like the cry laughing face. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I'm making it with my hands, but again, I told you can't see my face. I use that one a lot, so it didn't surprise me. But the students, they read that article, and then they had a little worksheet that they filled out and said, from the text, this is how I learned that from the text, this is the most used emoji. This is how they find out what the most used emoji is, and here are 2 steps of that process. So they were just, even in a smaller scale, they were learning how to pull text, pull information from the text. So that was one that they did in the classroom. One that I found that I want to use in this unit was about the great white shark. And it was just, again, 1-page article about how we should love the great white shark and why we should save it. And so, again, they'll pull that evidence from, this is why people think we should save the great white shark. This is why some people may think you shouldn't save it. But again, here are 2 more reasons of why we should save the great white shark. So just kind of going over argumentative and breaking it down with articles. So they've got articles that they read, they get videos that they watch, they have my lectures, and then a lot of peer work. So I'm trying to hit a bunch of different teaching methods through this unit so they don't get bored with just watching videos the whole time or just doing articles the whole time or just listening to me. I like posters. Put them up all over my room. We'll do some peer revising, and they have a peer edit checklist that they have to fill out. Again, the counter. Sorry, I'm trying to get down to my final project. So in the Utah Compose that I talked about, the district requires it, that you have to submit it to get some data on the students. So after all this writing that I've really broken up through this whole unit, so it's not like they just have to sit down and write an essay. They get to break it down into chunks. That's for the district, which it's also for me, but it's mostly for the district. And then I have a project that I want them to do. Oh, I went past it. At the very end of my unit. So if we go back to my slideshow, I have this project ideas. So they can do a blog, just a poster that's about argumentative writing. They can give me a video lesson. They could do an ad poster about a product or a campaign poster about themselves. The 8th graders at this time of the year, they were making campaign posters for government for the high school. And so the 7th graders were all excited about that, and we wanted to do that. So I thought that would be a fun thing to add into it. So what they do with these projects is after we finish the writing, I'll give them a little break in the after the writing. We'll kind of talk about what they've done and how our scores compare in Utah Compose, and we kind of have a fun little lesson that we do with that. And then we get to this project, and I teach them about the project. I give them a rubric for what I expect for them, and tell them they will be presenting these to the class. So by presenting them, not all of them will have to talk. If they feel uncomfortable talking, we can just display the poster. But some of their work will be displayed to the students, whether it's in a poster, a video lesson, a blog that they put together.